Hey guys, it's Tuesday, so that means it's time for Quick Tip Tuesdays, so let's fire it up. When working with synth sounds, it can get difficult to get it to sit properly in the composition when it comes time to mix. The quick tip for this Tuesday is a technique to help you to get that synth under control. So when dealing with a more animated style synth, there's usually a lot going on frequency-wise. There's constant movement creating very unpredictable spikes in the frequencies, which is what you probably liked about the synth in the first place. So what I find usually helps me to keep the sound under control while still keeping the characteristics that made it so likable and unique is to split the low band and the high band to two separate tracks, so I can process the low end of the sound separately from the high end of the sound. So the way to achieve this is to duplicate the track with the specific sound on it, and on the first instance you're going to place a low pass filter, which will now designate this the low end or the bass part of the sound, and on the second instance you're going to place a high pass filter, which will now have all the higher end frequencies on the second instance. So now you can process the low end using more low frequency focused processing techniques, and then do the opposite for the high end. Then you can possibly sum those tracks back together on a bus and then do some overall compression on that if you desire. But this just gives you more control over the sound, making it possible for you to design it the way you want and to get it to sit in the mix properly. From time to time, you may need unique vocal effects to spice up your production and help give your tracks that extra tonal texture. The quick tip for this Tuesday is to record your vocals with some type of unconventional recording device. So most times this isn't a technique that you would use on your main vocals, and I get that there are plugins out there that can give you a similar effect, but it's always beneficial to experiment and get creative with your secondary/background vocals. Plus, doing it this way may result in you learning something. So one unconventional recording device that I would recommend is a pair of headphones. Yes, it is possible to use your headphones as a mic. So give it a try, and once you're done recording, get creative and weird with your plugin effects to see what new interesting results you come up with. In last week's video, I talked about adding unique vocal effects to spice up your production and help give your tracks that extra tonal texture. So for this Tuesday, I'm going to continue with that topic. The quick tip for this Tuesday is about DIY vocal effects part 2. So just like I said in last week's video, most times this isn't a technique that you would use on your main vocals. And I do understand that there are plugins out there that can give you a similar effect. But it's always beneficial to experiment and get creative with your secondary/background vocals. Also, be aware that this method is final, so there's no going back once it's recorded. But remember, doing this may end up giving you some insight and a new perspective. So last week's theme was about recording your audio source with an unconventional device. So my suggestion for this week is to record with a toy mic or even a broken mic. Now, based on the results, you may have to do some tweaking once it's recorded. So give it a try, and don't be afraid to get creative and really weird with your plugin effects and see what new interesting results that you come up with. When recording 2 or more singers at the same time or live instruments, there are some very interesting aspects to consider, and one of them is miking technique. The quick tip for this Tuesday is about the figure 8 miking technique. Now for this method, there are some very specific things needed. So first, you're going to need 2 condenser mics capable of switching to bidirectional mode. So that's basically when the mic is recording from the front and the back only, no sides. You're going to need 2 mic stands, with at least one of them being a boom mic stand. This is specifically needed due to the mic positioning that is required for this technique. So now the first mic will be in the traditional upright position facing front, and the second mic will be upside down and perpendicular to the first mic. So the front and the back of the second mic will essentially be facing to the sides. Now, this is a great technique to use with multiple sources surrounding the mic setup. So for example, a group of singers. In last week's video, I talked about the figure 8 miking technique. For this week, I'm going to continue with the theme of miking techniques. I feel it gets overlooked because we tend to focus on the in-the-box effects and techniques when it comes to shaping the vibe, spatial feel, and the texture of our compositions. So the quick tip for this Tuesday is about the mid-side stereo miking technique. Now, just like in last week's video, this method requires some very specific tools. So first, you're going to need one condenser mic capable of switching to bidirectional mode. That's basically when the mic is recording from the front and the back only, no sides. Now, the second mic needs to be a one-directional mic. Now, whether that mic is one-directional by default or it can be switched to one-directional mode. You'll also need 2 mic stands, with at least one of them being a boom mic stand. So now the one-directional mic will be facing the source that you're trying to record, and this represents the mid signal. And the bidirectional mic will be turned perpendicular to the first mic, so the front and the back will be facing the sides. And obviously this represents the side signal in this stereo miking technique. Now, one of the advantages of this technique is that your recorded signal will be more mono compatible. Also, you'll have way more flexibility and control over the mid and the side signal, and this will enable you to process them separately for some amazing results. So use this technique on a guitar amp, an acoustic instrument, or even some vocals. When it comes to recording audio as we construct our composition, whether it's vocals, instruments, or sound effects, there are some practices that we should implement on a regular basis, especially at the end of each session. Now, the quick tip for this Tuesday is to clean up your media pool. Now, for each DAW, this may be slightly different because the terminology might not be the same, like it being called the audio pool instead of the media pool. But in any case, the purpose and the end result of this function is the same. So practice performing a media pool cleanup at the end of your sessions if you were recording audio. When it comes to choosing a DAW, whether it's your first time or you've just decided to switch, this can become a very daunting task. So the quick tip for this Tuesday is a simple checklist of questions to ask yourself to help you come to a more realistic and practical decision. So question number 1 is, does it do what you need it to do? So whatever your level is, you should at least have a basic idea of what you need this DAW to do as far as functionality and features are concerned. Now, question number 2, is there a sufficient amount of learning resources out there for you to get acclimated to this DAW? So whether it be online resources or even a person that can walk you through, get you started, and answer most of your questions. And now question number 3 is what makes this checklist very practical. And that is, can you afford it? Because if not, then the other 2 questions are irrelevant. So utilize this checklist to help you narrow down your options and zero into a final decision. When mixing, we always want the best when it comes to the end results. So from a nice big full sound to it not only being rich in tone and dynamic, but also texture. So the quick tip for this Tuesday is about stacking. Now, with stacking or layering, it's very important to understand how to layer sounds together in a way that they complement each other. So as far as the sounds that you choose to stack together, and also how you EQ them together as a stacked group and in context to the entire mix. Now, we see the best example of this all the time in an orchestra ensemble. We see how the instruments are usually grouped and layered to emphasize melodies, harmonies, and counter melodies, and also even hits. So think about implementing this strategy to layer your chords, your vocal harmonies, and even your sound effects to give it more texture and depth. So for your next composition, pay close attention to how you stack your sounds, then bring it all together with some strategic EQing and some clever penning. Okay guys, that was the quick tip for this Tuesday. Thanks for watching, and as always, you'll see me in the next video.